Okay, so welcome to Muscles and Mobility. We are going to start today with some breathing drills. We'll get a little bit of shoulder mobility going paired with our breath work, and then we'll work all our way through from internal and external rotation at the shoulder. We'll go through a couple of pails and rails isometric contractions, which if you don't know what that means now, you will know after the class is done. And then we'll work our way through our spine, our cervical, thoracic, and lumbar spine, and then all the way back down to our hips. And very similar to the shoulders, we'll work our way through internal and external rotation with both stretching and strengthening. So before we start, I have a towel rolled up here. If you have a yoga block, that would be appropriate, but most people don't have yoga blocks lying around at home. So I've taken this towel and I folded it lengthwise in half once, lengthwise in half again, so it's nice and narrow. And then I'm just going to roll it up nice and tight. And we are going to use this as a block later. If it's a little bit too big, you can always, of course, unroll it for some of the movement. So I'm going to set that to the side for now. And we are going to start lying on our back. And I'm going to lay in a nice neutral position here so I don't have my hips excessively kind of rolled forward and I don't have them excessively tucked back. So I am able to get like a little bit of my hand under here, although it's not so large that I can reach my other hand all the way through. From this position, I'm going to rest my feet wherever is comfortable, so you can take a moment to find that if that's a narrower stance or a slightly wider stance, or conversely, if it feels uncomfortable on your hips or knees, you can, of course, step out. And then from here, I'm just going to put my hands on my lower rib cage. So we tend to crisis breathe or stress breathe through a lot of our day where we're at computers and hunched over phones. And when we do that, we tend to shrug our shoulders to try and peel our rib cage open. So what I mean by that is, like, you know, how often kind of do you find yourself at your computer during the day and then you're kind of shrugging your shoulders or tightening your neck to try and peel that rib cage apart to get air in. So we're going to do a breathing drill to try and get some expansion. And when we crisis breathe like that, we tend to lose expansion in our lower rib cage and lose the diaphragm's ability to descend down into the organ cavity. It applies pressure onto the pelvic floor. We pull our pelvic floor in, so we've got this kind of air compressed center, and then our lungs are able to fully expand down, as opposed to have to be like ripped up towards our shoulders in order to be filled with air. So I'm going to put my fingertips right on that soft part of my stomach, right below that edge of my ribs, and then I'm going to put my thumbs in the back. You'll feel kind of some of your lower ribs or your floating ribs, and I'm going to have my thumbs on those ribs. So here I'm going to breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth, just like I'm blowing up a balloon. And we're going to do 3 normal breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth at about a 4 count. So you may have noticed that you were able to breathe a little bit into your stomach. You may have found it a little bit tougher to breathe into these posterior ribs. So we're going to do a couple more here. And on this next part, as you exhale, I want you to, when you think you're done exhaling, exhale just a little bit more, and you'll feel some of this deep lower abdominal musculature kind of light up, maybe 2 inches over and 2 inches down or so from your belly button. And so we're really going to try to get some abdominal contraction as we force our exhale a little bit harder. So again, as I inhale through my nose, I'm going to think about expanding into my thumbs and the ribs in the back and into my fingers on my stomach. Take a nice long exhale, or inhale rather. Expanding 360 into that belt, and then exhaling through the mouth like I'm blowing up a balloon. You'll feel some 360 compression. When you think you're all done, compress in a little more and you'll feel those ribs shrink. So we'll do 2 more breaths like that, really expanding into the lower ribs and then really compressing as we exhale. One more breath. So we're going to keep this breath cycle continuous, and I'm going to place my arms parallel to one another, and I'm going to reach up tall towards the ceiling. So I'm not squunching my shoulder blades behind me or overarching my back. I'm really actively feeling my shoulder blades wrap that rib cage and reach towards the ceiling. And we'll do a breath here, in through the nose, out through the mouth, just the same. And now we're going to get our shoulders involved. So as I bring my hand overhead, I'm going to inhale, thinking about expanding. And then as I bring my arm back down, I'm going to exhale, thinking about compressing. So I'm able to have my thumb kind of like in a thumbs up position, and then my palm facing in towards my face. So nice straight arm, upper arm in line with the ear when we do this. If your shoulders are less mobile or that feels painful or uncomfortable, especially on that closing angle, that back of the shoulder, then what we want to do is go ahead and bring your arms out a little bit wider, so you're more of a Y, and that may give you some room. If you find you're not able to do, you're able to come straight up and down, but you're not able to do it with a straight elbow, and then we just bend our elbow a little bit. So whatever your range of motion that you have pain-free access to is the range of motion that you'll use. So as with everything, it's important to make this work for your body and not try and force yourself into what I'm doing, because we have different bodies. So here I'm going to inhale. Still expanding into this lower area. So you notice as I brought my arm up, I didn't drive my rib cage up. That kind of pump handle with my sternum is still down. And then from here, we'll do 2 more reps on that side. And 1 more rep here. And then we'll do 3 on the other, still reaching. You may notice it becomes easier to have your breaths last a slightly longer period of time as your rib cage gets used to expanding in that lower portion. And 1 more breath here. So from here, I'm going to bring my arms out to my sides like a T. So I'm imagining as though I've got almost like a stake that's forcing my arm up to my side. If this isn't comfortable for you to come up, you can bring your elbows down slightly, but if it is comfortable for you, and then we'll go ahead and have our elbows and shoulders in line, just like we're a T. From here, my palms are facing down, my spine is nice and neutral. We're going to keep that same lower rib expansion, kind of 360 for the rest of the session. And then from here, just going to come into some external rotation of the shoulder. I'm opening up. Now you'll notice if you can't get back, you may try and fault with your wrist. We may try to cheat and say, like, try to get back. But really, we're just bending our wrist. We're not getting any more extension of the shoulder. So here I'm going to try and externally rotate with a nice flat hand. And I've got pretty mobile shoulders, although still I have a bit of a difference between my left and my right. So my right has a little more external, left tends to have a little more internal. And as you come up, you feel that shoulder want to lift, or you feel yourself kind of crunch to the side. Shorten your range of motion up until you're really able to just do this true internal rotation here. I'm not dumping my shoulder forward. It's got true IR as far as I can go, with the back of my shoulders still in contact with the ground. And then true ER, again, as far as I can go back without deviating and driving my rib cage up. So we're just going to do 2 more reps here. Down, a little bit of a stretch, and back, down, a little bit of a stretch, and back. So here, we're going to mobilize a little bit more into external rotation. So I'm going to grab my towel and put it here. And I'm going to lay on my chest. I'm just going to use this other arm as a kind of support here for my head, so my head and neck are able to stay nice and neutral. Now I'm going to put my hand here on my little bolster, and I'm not going to let my shoulder kind of roll or dump towards the floor. So I've got some space here, and I'm going to keep that space. From here, I'm going to drop my elbow down some, and you'll feel stretch start to appear in the back of the shoulder. If you feel pain or pinching, back off a little bit with that elbow up a touch. But for me, this is an okay external rotation stretch. you've got really hypermobile shoulders, you might be able to stick your bolster or your yoga block up a little bit higher. If you're in a conventional gym environment, you could use a kettlebell, but in any circumstance, if you're gonna do this and get yourself more external rotation, make sure you're doing it with your shoulder and not just bending at that wrist or dumping the shoulder or kind of hiking your hips or pulling that elbow down towards your hips. So we really want to make sure that if we're doing it, we're being honest with ourselves. We've got this shoulder nice and neutral, and we're just going to hang out in a stretch here, and we're going to do 3 breaths. So I'm going to come in through my nose, trying to expand. Because our stomach's a little compressed, it'll probably force you to get a little more expansion in that posterior rib cage. So I'm going to come in through the nose again. Feel those back ribs, and then last one, feel your posterior rib cage expand. So we've stretched into external rotation. From here, I'm going to put my elbow up. So now we're going to actively, we kind of use passive methods to get some external rotation restored in our shoulder. Now we're going to do some end range isometrics. So typically speaking, we're pretty good at producing force in the middle range of a joint, but we're not very good at producing force at the far end ranges. So here we're going to do some isometric contractions, just like the old Charles Atlas isometric program. And again, support my head. I'm going to inhale, and then I'm going to slowly build tension, 10%, 20%, ramp that ISO up to 40, to 60, and then to 80, where you're externally rotating to 100% as hard as you can for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And come back down and relax it. Let that shoulder relax. Again, I'm keeping my space under this shoulder, so I'm not letting it dump forward or drop towards the ground. And we're going to do 2 more isometric contractions here, never cheating at the wrist. And I'm going to externally rotate, building from 10 to 20 to 40 to 60 to 80 to 100% as hard as you can for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. You should see me shaking here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax that out. Whew. Feel a burn in the back of your shoulders. Get those external rotators. We're going to do 1 more here. Again, externally rotate for 10 intensity, 20, 40%, 60%, 80, and then 100%, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and back down. And you'll probably notice now that we've done that. We've kept some of our range of strength. If you come back to your stretch, that's not going to feel like as much stretch anymore. In fact, probably could get a little more if I had something to passively stretch my shoulder. I'd have a little more external rotation. So we're going to repeat that just the same on the other side. I'm going to turn around for you guys so you can see. Again, I've got pretty mobile shoulders, so I'm going to stick my bolster perfectly upright here, but you do what feels comfortable for you. I'll give you a slightly different angle here. I'm going to put my hand up, keep my elbow kind of nice and parallel to the ground. I've got space under the shoulder. I'm not dumping it or dumping it forward where my shoulder blade wants to kind of curl up towards my ear. I've got good space around the joint. And then we're going to let this stretch here for 3 breaths, expanding into the rib cage, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then same deal here. I'm going to bring my ruler over. I'm going to support my elbow. I'm not going to deviate at the wrist. If you don't have as much external rotation, you're going to try and stick those knuckles up. So I like to keep a fist and keep a nice flat back of my hand here. And then from here, I'm going to contract at 10, 20, 40, 60, 80, and then 100% for 10, 9,
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You'll probably notice that your shoulders are different. So for me, my left shoulder is a lot weaker at this, and I just keep practicing, but you may notice that it's slightly different, and we don't necessarily want to force our sides to be the same. Of course, we'll train towards symmetry, but you may not find that you've got perfect symmetry, and that's okay. So again, here I'm going to contract for 10, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Take a breath, and then we're going to do one more here. Externally rotate for 10, 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100% for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, we could retest that external rotation here. Let that elbow drop, some space, that elbow drop. See how you feel. You probably feel a little looser than you did when we started. So here we worked external rotation of the shoulder. We're going to work some internal rotation now. Internal rotation, our ability to compress, is deeply related to our ability to produce force. So internal and external rotation are not just referring to if we're moving towards our midline or away from our midline. You can think about this helical structure almost like a strand of DNA. Collagen, the primary fiber that a lot of our elastic tissue and our connective tissue is made out of. Collagen wraps like a double helix in its structure. We very much mirror that, and so we can think about external rotation as the opening, as that part of the helix comes outside of itself, and internal rotation is this downward pressure gradient, force producing against gravity, where it wraps in on itself, and that's inward rotation. So we are just kind of like mirroring the same pattern all the way from a very small microscopic level all the way up. And here, I'm going to lay on my side. I'm going to use the same bolster as a support. I like to keep this hip upright a little bit. If you feel more comfortable here, you can. You can do whichever feels good to you. I'm going to stay just a touch open. And then this shoulder is not kind of shrugging up very far. So it's okay if it has a little bit of upward movement, but we don't want it to be like kind of sunken fully underneath us. So I'm going to support my head and think about staying tall, staying long through my neck. My arm is out here at like 90 degrees to the rest of my body. If that doesn't feel comfortable, you can bring it down slightly until it feels okay for you. Again, none of this stuff should hurt. I'm going to bring this arm up just at that 90 degree like we just did with our external, but I'm going to push in the opposite direction. So not pushing on my hand and folding at the wrist, I'm pushing on the back of my forearm right at the base of it. And we're going to hold this stretch for 3 breaths. Again, expanding into these ribs here. Then we're going to do a very similar contraction cycle. So just how we did the contraction in the external direction, I'm actually going to do another external rotation contraction here. So I'm going to push down, and this hand's going to push back up like it's trying to forcefully externally rotate in this in-range position. So again, I'm going to start at 10, 20, and build from 20 to 40, 60, 80 to 100% intensity contraction for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you'll probably notice after you relax that, you've got access to a little more internal rotation. So we're going to repeat this again. Again, building from 10 to 20 to 40, 60, 80, and then 100% intensity on that contraction for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then again, you'll notice we've got a little more internal rotation. So here, I'm going to cup my hand underneath my forearm, and now I'm actively going to press into internal rotation as hard as I can for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So here again, you may notice you can actively contract now. You can come from that external all the way into that internal without your shoulder really rolling up. So if you feel your shoulder is like shrinking towards your ear, then kind of reset that and then actively come through that range of motion and check out. We've got a lot more space than what we had when we started. I started about here and now I'm all the way down to the floor and we're just keeping that with that isometric contraction. So we're gonna hit the other side now. Again, support on my head here. Keep my shoulder from being shrugged too far towards my ear. And then from here, I'm gonna bring this arm up, take this hand, press on that forearm, get some of that stretch here. Now I'm a little bit more mobile on internal rotation on this side. You noticed I was a little limited, so shoulders are just a touch different, although the total degrees is likely the same, but we've got, you know, a little more one way and a little more the other. So here, 3 breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then again, we're going to do these isometric contractions here, and I'm going to drive this hand upwards into this one, and I'm going to start at a 10% intensity and build to 20 and 40, 60, 80, and then 100 for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and back off. And you probably notice you've got some more range of motion here. And then again, contract for 10%, 20%, 40, 60, 80, and then 100 for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, you'll probably notice like I can get my hand almost all the way down to the ground now here with a nice straight wrist. Got a lot more internal rotation. So with this new internal rotation, I'm gonna put that hand under the wrist. I'm trying to pull it into external. I'm not gonna let it, I'm gonna fight it down this way, but not by bending at the wrist. I'm gonna keep a nice straight wrist, fight straight down. And again, we're gonna build from 10% to 20 to 40 to 60, 80, and then 100 for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, you may notice you've got even more internal rotation at that shoulder. And not only that, you've got the strength to control through most of that range of motion. You'll likely have a difference. If I push, that's passive range. And if I do this manually with my muscular system, that's active range. We generally don't want more than a 15 to 20% difference between the two. And so say we've got a large excursion on passive and we're only maybe able to control that, 40 or 60% actively. These end range contractions are going to help us take control of more of that range of motion with active range rather than just passive range. So now that we've hit our shoulders, we are going to move on and hit our spine. So most of us have probably done cat-cow in a yoga class before, and we are going to use the cat-cow position. Although I'm not a yoga instructor, we are going to do things slightly differently. And we are going to try and get some global flexion and extension in both the cervical, those 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, most of our rib cage here, and then the 5 lumbar vertebrae. So we can go ahead and set this to the side for now. And I'm going to get in a quadruped position. From here, I've got my knees under my hips, my hands under my shoulders, and my back is nice and flat. My shoulder blades aren't shrugged towards my ears. I'm not sunk between them, and conversely, I don't have them really aggressively wrapped around me either. If this isn't comfortable for your wrists, you're welcome to just step those hands out a little bit. If at any point in time your wrists need a break, you can come up into this position for some wrist relief and hold for a moment and then rejoin when you're ready. So from here, you can also come into a fists position. This is probably my least favorite because it does change our height a little bit, but it's okay if you don't have the full wrist mobility, and you can come from a fists position as well. So here from our tabletop, I'm going to start by tucking my tail. So I'm going to imagine, rather than just kind of like doing this sick cat dance thing that we see a lot of cat-cow turn into, I'm going to imagine piece by piece, like every single vertebrae in our spine is made up of
little increments, each that contributes a part to the whole. I'm gonna imagine right at the tip of the tail, I'm gonna tuck under and I'm gonna roll that up through my spine all the way to my neck. So I'm neutral, and then here I'm gonna tuck, tuck, tuck and roll, tuck and roll, tuck and roll all the way through. Tuck my chin and then roll my cervical vertebrae too. And then we're gonna reverse that and we can extend the tail, but keep the rest of it. So extend, extend, roll that extension up, roll it up to the mid-spine, upper thoracic, and again, tuck and extend at the neck, only as far as it's comfortable. So again, if you get closing angle joint pain or anything pinches or is painful, back off a little bit. One common fault in extension is people will try to sink between their shoulder blades. This is not true extension. So I can be fairly flat and sink. That's not the same thing. I also don't want to bend my arms or bend my elbows backwards. So this is not extension either. This is me bending my elbows. So again, we're going to tuck, but rather than going from the tail, we're going to go from the neck first. So I'm nice and neutral. I'm gently drawing the heels of my hands towards my knees. And I'm going to tuck my chin back first. So again, I'm not hinging at the base of my neck. I want each part to contribute to the whole, kind of like a class project, right? You've got the students that do the work and the students that don't, and the students that don't overburden the students that do. So again, kind of very similarly, that C6, C7 area starts to be one of the students doing the work while the rest of the neck is just kind of coming along for the ride. And everybody gets a bad grade that way. So here we're gonna tuck and roll and tuck and tuck and tuck and round. Flex, 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 all the way down to the tail. And then again, I'm gonna extend, 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 every single vertebrae of the neck. Extend at the thoracic spine. I'm not faulting through my elbows or shrugging my shoulder blades. Extend, extend, extend into my lumbar spine. Very good. And then you can take a moment to shake it out. Get yourself a wrist relief position. And we'll take a few breaths. So here, very similarly to how we did contractions for our shoulders and internal and external, we are going to do a couple of contractions for our spine for both extension and flexion. Now, here, I'm going to come again into that position. I'm going to tuck, 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 tuck. I'm going to come all the way into my flexed pose. And once I'm all the way here, I'm actually going to try and push my hands and knees away from each other. So again, just how we built tension over kind of a 10 count and then held it for a 10 count. I'm going to start by pushing my hands and knees away from each other at 10%, 20%, 40%, 60, 80, 100 for 10, 9, 8, 7, feel those abs, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax. I'm going to extend, 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 extend all the way through. And then again, very similarly here, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to drag my hands and knees towards each other and come into even more flexion. So we don't want any of this to be painful. If you feel like something's going to nag or pinch at you, back off until what feels reasonable for you. So we want this to be effortful, but not cause pain. So again, here I'm bringing all my nice extension all the way through the whole spine. I'm going to build tension for 10, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can back off. And kind of roll that spine out a little bit. Let some of that muscular tissue relax. And here we're going to move on to our hips. And I'm going to come in what we refer to as a 90-90 position. So if you've done yoga in the past, you've probably seen pigeon's pose where you put your leg way back behind you. My replaced hip isn't quite mobile enough for that. But if you aren't comfortable in pigeon's pose, this 90-90 is a great option for almost everybody. And if this hip doesn't come into extension for you, you just bring that knee up forward a little bit. Conversely, sometimes this will cause people to have a little bit of tightness on the knee as this band of tissue is a little bit snug. So
If that's the case, bringing that up and flexing that knee a little more can give you a little bit more space in there. So here, I'm gonna come fully into my 90-90. Means I'm 90 degrees at the front knee and hip, 90 degrees at the back knee and hip, and we are gonna start with some internal rotation. So again, just like our shoulder, we've got internal rotation that's spiraling down in the double helix, and external rotation that's spiraling out of the double helix. So to get that hip to spiral in, I'm gonna open my torso out over. I'm gonna try and get my face in line with my knee, and I'm just gonna gaze forward. I don't want my shoulders to dump or my rib cage to kind of zhuzh to the side. So here, I'm gonna stay nice and proud and nice and square, and I'm actually gonna roll my shoulders open behind me. Now, if it's not comfortable for you to be upright in this, give yourself more space by backing out. Back off until you feel okay, but still trying to roll those shoulders open. I'm pretty mobile on internal rotation here, so I'm gonna sit nice and tall, and this is gonna be the rule for our 90-90 in almost every position, where taller is gonna be a little more difficult, a little more reclined is gonna be a little bit easier. So from here, now we've stretched into internal rotation. You might feel some of this tissue here. If you feel any pain or pinching in the groin, back off. I'm going to come onto my side here. So again, this would be the most difficult position, and we're going to give ourselves some space. One thing that I do want to show you is if we come over to our elbow or even to our hand, I don't want my rib cage to fold. So I'm going to keep these obliques nice and tight. I'm going to pull that rib cage square. You'll feel your lats engage some. And then from here, we're gonna come into internal rotation at the hip. So I'm gonna lift that ankle. And again, we're just gonna hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, back off. Again, I'm not letting my rib cage sink. So keep those ribs up. If that was pretty easy for you, you can come up on your hand and post a little bit taller. But don't let your ribs shift to the side, so staying nice and square. I'm gonna lift and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and back down. If you're not able to get your lower leg off the ground at all, that's okay. The importance is the intention here. We're intending to try and lift. I'm not picking up my whole leg. I'm just pivoting over that knee. You may find it comfortable to, or helpful rather, to push that knee into the ground on that inside edge as you try and lift, and that can give you a little bit more of an advantage too. So here, I'm gonna lift and internally rotate and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then recheck that internal rotation, and you'll probably find, just like our shoulder, that you've got a little more room going on there. Now, you're gonna do one more deal here, and so from here, I'm gonna internally rotate, I'm gonna lift, put my hand here, straighten my leg out, and come back. So again, I'm gonna keep that rib cage folded this way, and then I'm gonna internally rotate, lift, hand to keep myself from kneeing myself forward, so that knee stays pointed down. Squeeze your quad, bring it back. If that's too tough, come to the elbow. Internally rotate, lift, squeeze the quad, bring it back. Again, open up and retest that internal rotation. We're gonna hit this on both sides. So here, again, I'm gonna open up. Just like your shoulders, you'll probably find that one is different than the other. So I find IR on my right hip a little bit tougher. And here I'm gonna open out over that hip, get a good stretch. We'll take 3 breaths, just like we did. Opening my chest. Should feel that internal rotation stretch here. These should be our limiting tissues up here that are lengthening, not that groin. Again, if it's your groin, back off, give yourself some more room. So here again, I'm gonna be nice and tall. My rib cage is over, so I'm not letting myself kind of float to the side. And then here I'm gonna lift into internal rotation and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and back down. We'll do that 2 more times. We'll lift in internal rotation. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and back down. And last one, again, if this is too tough, you can come over on your elbow. You'll notice I've got a little more room that way. Now hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come back down. Now here's for the tough part. I'm going to internally rotate, lift, extend, come back, and come back down. That's much tougher for me on this side, so I'm actually going to come over to my elbow so that I still get all my range of motion. Internally rotate, lift, extend, back, knee down first, last one, internal, up, extend, knee comes down first, and back down. Again, retest that internal rotation, probably going to be feeling pretty good compared to when you started. You can even walk that foot out a little bit, really try and open your chest or sit up tall. I don't feel any pull in the side of that leg anymore. From here, you can use this position to go ahead and stretch that front leg. So we've done internal rotation at the hip. Now we're going to do external rotation at the hip. So I'm going to stretch. You can come forward here. I'm trying to keep my chest proud. So this is where that spinal mobility that we just did can be helpful. I'm almost going to try and put my sternum in front of my nose. Now I may not be able to fully do that, but I'm going to hinge forward. So stand long, trying to get distance between this hip and my head. So to show you from on the other side here, nice and tall, chest is nice and proud. I'm getting distance between this hip and my chest. And you should feel stretch deep in the back of that glute. We'll hold this for another breath. And then from here, I'm going to come into external rotation. So this might be a little bit tough for a lot of you. So if you need to help yourself out with a bit of a handhold and then try and hold that contraction, you can. I struggle with this hip because I've got a joint replacement going on over here. So I'm not actually fully able to lift into full internal rotation. So I'm going to help myself up and I'm going to hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, trying to push my knee to the ground, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, back down. And we're going to do that 2 more times. So try and internally rotate, pushing that knee into the floor, trying to lift this. I'm going to give myself a little bit of help here for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and back down. You can give yourself a little more room this way, although there's a bit of a diminishing returns. If you're too opened up, you're going to really struggle to lift. So I like to be a little more upright, really focusing on pushing that knee into the floor and lifting again for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you can retest that range of motion. You'll probably notice you don't feel quite as much of a stretch in the back of that hip. So we'll do the same thing on the other side, and we'll be all done here. So I'm going to stay nice and tall, chest proud, sternum in front of my nose, big stretch in the back of this glute. 3 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. If you want, some folks like to put a tennis ball under here. That can give you some tactile information for something to push into. You could put a small pad, just like the rolled up corner of something, give you something to feel like you're actively pushing into it, or you can really just focus on pressing the side of that knee into the floor. So here I'm going to come into some external rotation rather. I'm going to lift and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and down. And then again, if this is too tough, you don't have to encroach on your joint. You can back off. We're going to externally rotate again for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
2, 1. And last one here, really trying to get some ER. You can even lift and then try and maintain that yourself if you want to. Just take that hand away for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then again, retest that stretch. You'll probably notice you can get quite a bit farther down. That wraps up our class today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.